Genesis 1 is more like the blueprint of time, and Genesis 2 is for me more the principles laid down, but it's like they mix. Everything that is said in Genesis 1, 2, and 3 affects the whole of humanity and creation and time. And if we understand it, we will understand the eternal purposes of God. The first mention carries us through the rest of the Bible because the volume of the book, I've come to do your will. This is what the Bible is all about. Now, I have not met many people that got saved by reading Bible. So why on the earth do we have a Bible? We have a Bible so we can understand the purposes of God. In verse 5, this is an amazing verse because this is before man fell. Genesis 3 deals with the fall of man. But Genesis 2 verse 5 brings these realms and days in connection. And this is all happening in one verse. And if you understand the spirit language, these verses are of major importance. Again, verse 4 says, these 7 days are the generations in a day. This is the key verse to understand Genesis 1 and the whole book of Genesis and the whole Bible. And he says, these are the generations of the heavens and the earth when they were created in the day that God created the earth and the heavens. One earth, different heavens, meaning different worlds are breaking out in time. Verse 5, and every plant of the field before it was on the earth. When was plants on the earth? They were created on day 3. What happened before day 3? He divided the waters from the waters. Waters always means provision and life. It's waters of life. And the waters of life came through the tree of life. In Revelation, the water came forth from the land, and both sides were the tree of life. So the water gushed from the tree of life. It's all one concept. He's the tree of life. He's where our life comes from, and He is where our provision comes from. The separation of the waters is the provision that's going to come from beneath and above. And that was also the second world, and the second world coincides with Abraham when he said, in your seed and in your seed in their generations. By the way, we've got nothing to do with the generational seed. We are children of Abraham. He says, for the Lord God have not caused it to rain upon the earth. Wow, it never rained in the creation day. When did it rain? It rained in the flood with Noah for the first time. Why? Because of the sins, and God was bringing in a new day, a new era. Day 1 coincides with Noah, and that is when it rained. Before, there was a man to till the ground. And this is the link between the heavenly realm and the fallen realm, or the heavenly realm that lifted from this dark realm that we are born into. And he says in verse 6, in perfection, in the Eden, there went up a mist from the earth and watered the whole face of the earth. Everything was provided because God is omniscient, omnipresent, and He is just the one that provides. There was no hose pipes and there was no irrigation. You didn't have to live close to a river because the mist was there. It was perfection. He said, and in this, God formed man. God then placed man in a garden that He made. Now the garden means a close situation. And God planted man in this close situation that manifests on earth. Again, some doctrines say that the Garden of Eden is not a real place. But now, he says here in verse 9, out of the ground God made every tree to grow. So there was not just Adam and Eve. Adam and Eve was the prototype. They had a generation. But here he explains the garden. He says, and a river went out of Eden and watered the garden from whence it was potted, and it became 4 heads. So one river became 4 heads. This is not natural at all. In the natural, 4 rivers might form one river and it goes into the sea. Now in the Bible, seas are the people. But here, the river comes from Eden onto the earth, and it doesn't go out into the sea because there was no nations and there was no sea. 4 meaning earth. Now these 4 rivers had names: the Pison, the Gihon, the Tigris, and the Euphrates. Now again, we know the Tigris and the Euphrates. And even in Revelation, it talks about the highway that comes from the Euphrates, the peoples that stream in. But here in Genesis, there are 4 rivers, 2 unknown and 2 known. Now, if we know these rivers, we know where this whole thing of Adam and Eve played out. Now, amazing. It was the Garden of Eden was manifested there. If you go there now, oh my word, it's just desert. The same as Abraham and Lot. When Abraham chose the mountains, Lot chose the fertile valleys. If you go there now, where Sodom and Gomorrah was, oh my word, there's nothing growing there. And there's even a Dead Sea. What we have here is a place where it actually manifested on earth. But here we have 2 rivers and 2 rivers. 2 we know, 2 we don't know. It's like this agreement on earth, and it's provision. The first one means increase. And this river goes around the land of Havilah, where there's a lot of gold, right in Eden. Who needed gold in Eden? This was provision. From the beginning, it is said, God has put everything man needs. I mean, nobody was selling and buying in Eden. You didn't need gold. I don't believe Eve was digging gold and hanging chains around her neck. The systems of the world is money. And money, the root of money is all evil. And evil is Satan himself. So what he did is he used a system of Babylon to create money. Babylon was the biggest nation ever on the earth, empire, and this is where the system of Babylon started. Money, 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 money. The first river goes around the gold fields. The name of the first river is Pison, and that is which compasses the whole land of Havilah, where there is gold, and the gold of that land was good. The gold now is bad. There is bdellium and the onyx stone. The end is always determined from the beginning. So the final sons of God manifested will have to be people that are not sold out to gold, but that can use gold, and they will be able to handle the riches. But the riches is not going to dominate them. It was said from the beginning. Then it was the Gihon. And the Gihon is literally bursting forth. Understanding the spirit language, everything goes like this. So what we have is we have the 4 generations, Adam, Noah, Abraham, and Christ. But these rivers also represent these 4 generations, which is streaming forth, bursting forth, rapid flowing, and then fruitful. And this is also the 4 rivers that came out of the throne. Ankle deep, knee deep, thigh deep, shoulder deep. Out of the throne comes the river. And it's now 4 time periods. As time goes, revelation grows. But these 4 rivers can also be linked with the 4 wells that Abraham digged. And when he dug them, the Philistines covered them and Isaac redug them. When dealing with Genesis, we are dealing with spirit language, and everything overlaps and envelops, and it foreshadows, and it reveals God's purposes, his eternal purpose that is settled in the heavens from the beginning to the end, because the end is settled from the beginning. In other words, as it was in the beginning, it shall be at the end.